An entire colony vanished, leaving only a single word carved into a post. History is not a solved puzzle, but a collection of open doors. As we look ahead to 2026, the greatest unsolved mysteries of our past continue to challenge everything we think we know. You are about to embark on a journey through time, exploring ancient disappearances that defy logic, cryptic artifacts that hint at lost knowledge, and phenomena that modern science still cannot fully explain. By the end, you will possess a deeper understanding of the shadows at the edges of our historical record, the questions that keep archaeologists and historians awake at night. We will confront a city that sank beneath the waves and a book written in a language no one can read. What is it about the unknown that pulls so powerfully at our curiosity? The word carved into that post was a single, desperate clue left behind in the wilderness: Croatoan. This is the heart of America's oldest missing persons case, a story that begins not with a bang, but with a hopeful and ultimately tragic silence. In 1587, over 100 English men, women, and children established a settlement on Roanoke Island, off the coast of what is now North Carolina. Their governor, John White, sailed back to England that same year to secure more supplies for the struggling colony. His return was delayed for 3 long years by a naval war with Spain. When he finally stepped back onto Roanoke's shores in 1590, he found a scene of profound emptiness. The entire settlement had been dismantled, not destroyed in haste, but taken apart with careful intention. The houses were gone, the fort was gone, the people were simply gone. The only message they left was that single word, Croatoan, carved into a post of the fort's gate, and the letters CRO carved into a nearby tree. There was no cross, the pre-arranged signal for distress, which suggested their departure was planned. So where did they go? The leading theory for centuries has been integration. Croatoan was the name of a nearby island, home to a Native American tribe that had been friendly with the colonists. It is possible the starving settlers, unable to wait any longer, chose to join the Croatoan people, gradually blending into their community through marriage and cultural exchange. This is a peaceful, logical explanation, yet other theories persist. Could a rival tribe have attacked, leaving no survivors? Did they attempt a desperate relocation further inland, only to meet with catastrophe? Modern archaeology has added fascinating but frustratingly incomplete pieces to the puzzle. Excavations on Hatteras Island, historically associated with the Croatoan, have uncovered a mix of English and Native American artifacts from the correct time period, including a rapier hilt and fragments of English pottery. These finds hint at contact and trade, but not definitive proof of assimilation. Another tantalizing clue emerged from soil analysis at the presumed site of the colony on Roanoke itself, suggesting a small group may have remained behind for a time, holding out hope for White's return. This mystery endures precisely because the evidence is so sparse and open to interpretation. We have a clue but not a map. We have theories but no body of evidence. The fate of the lost colony remains a ghost in the foundation of American history, a silent question that even our most advanced technology in 2026 has yet to answer with certainty. That single word, Croatoan, has echoed for centuries, a siren call to modern investigators armed with tools the Elizabethans could never have dreamed of. The quest to solve Roanoke is no longer just a historian's puzzle. It is a scientific one, spearheaded by groups like the First Colony Foundation. Their work has moved beyond the island itself, following a trail of 16th-century maps and artifacts to a place known only as Site X, located on the mainland in present-day North Carolina. Here, archaeologists have uncovered fragments of English pottery and weaponry from the correct time period, suggesting a small group from the colony may have relocated here, perhaps as a forward base or a temporary refuge. It is a compelling clue, but like all clues in this mystery, it raises more questions than it answers. Were these items traded or were they brought by the settlers themselves? If the settlers were here, what happened to them next? This is where the most promising and most delicate modern tool enters the story, DNA. Imagine the power of a genetic signature, a biological thread connecting a person living today directly back to one of those lost colonists. Researchers have undertaken ambitious studies, collecting DNA samples from volunteers with deep ancestral roots in the region, hoping to find rare European genetic markers that date to the late 1500s, markers that could only be explained by an early, unrecorded integration event. The challenges, however, are immense. Centuries of population movement, intermarriage, and the tragic decimation of native communities through disease and conflict have fragmented the genetic record. Proving a direct lineage across more than 400 years is a monumental task, akin to finding a single, specific drop of water in a vast and turbulent river. Furthermore, such research must be conducted with profound cultural sensitivity and collaboration with descendant communities, for it touches upon deeply personal histories. So while science has brought us closer, whispering possibilities through shards of pottery and strands of DNA, it has not yet spoken the final word. The lost colony of Roanoke remains, for now, a perfect emblem of historical mystery, a story where every answer reveals a deeper layer of questions, ensuring its place on any list of the world's greatest unsolved enigmas in 2026 and beyond. From a vanished colony, we cross continents to a vanished treasure, an object so powerful its very existence is woven into the fabric of faith and legend. The Ark of the Covenant is not merely a lost relic, it is the ultimate historical Holy Grail. According to the biblical book of Exodus, it was a chest of acacia wood, overlaid with pure gold, constructed under divine instruction to hold the stone tablets inscribed with the 10 Commandments. But it was far more than a container. It was described as the very throne of God on earth, a conduit for celestial power so potent that improper contact meant instant death. It led armies, parted rivers, and radiated an awe that defined the spiritual identity of an ancient people. For centuries, it resided in the inner sanctum of Solomon's temple in Jerusalem, the most sacred point in the Jewish world. Then history goes silent. When the Babylonian Empire sacked Jerusalem in 586 BC, destroying the temple, the historical record concerning the Ark's fate simply stops. The Babylonians meticulously documented the treasures they looted, but their lists never mention the Ark. Its disappearance is absolute, giving rise to centuries of speculation and quest. One enduring theory suggests it was never taken at all. Could devout priests, foreseeing the invasion, have secreted the Ark away in a labyrinth of tunnels beneath the Temple Mount, where it remains hidden to this day? This idea has fueled countless clandestine searches, though modern archaeology is severely restricted at the deeply contested site. Another captivating narrative comes from Ethiopia, where the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church maintains a profound claim. They believe the Ark was brought to their ancient city of Axum by Menelik I, the son of King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba, and that it has been guarded by a single monk in the chapel of the tablet for millennia. While the public sees only a replica during festivals, the Church's unwavering conviction presents a spiritual truth that defies physical verification. A simpler, more tragic possibility is that the Ark was simply melted down for its gold by conquerors who saw only bullion, not divinity, or was destroyed in the chaotic violence of the temple's destruction. Yet, its absence speaks louder than any theory. The Ark's potency in our collective imagination is undeniable, immortalized in films and novels as a source of supernatural power. Its potential discovery would be more than an archaeological triumph. It would be a seismic event, challenging historical understanding and shaking the foundations of the world's major religions. To find it would be to touch the tangible intersection of myth and history, to hold a mystery that has captivated humanity for over 2,500 years. The Chapel of the Tablet in Axum is a place where faith stands firm against the demands of empirical proof. According to the Kebra Nagast, Ethiopia's national epic, the Ark was brought to the kingdom by Menelik I after a visit to his father, King Solomon, in Jerusalem. The text describes a divine transfer of Zion's glory to a new land, a sacred covenant that established Ethiopia as a chosen nation. For centuries, the Ethiopian Orthodox Church has safeguarded this belief, stating that the true Ark rests within that chapel, watched over by a single, lifelong guardian monk who never leaves its side. To the faithful, this is not a theory to be debated but a spiritual reality, a continuous lineage of devotion that makes the artifact's location known, even if unseen by the world. Mainstream archaeology, however, operates on a different set of rules, one that requires physical evidence, documentation, and peer review. No outside scholar has been permitted to examine the object said to be housed in Axum, and without verifiable data, the academic world remains respectfully skeptical, classifying the claim as a powerful article of faith rather than a historical fact. This tension between spiritual certainty and scientific verification is the very engine of the mystery. This has not stopped others from searching in more traditional archaeological arenas, often with controversial results. The late amateur archaeologist Ron Wyatt claimed in the 1980s and 90s to have found the Ark buried in a cave system beneath the site of Christ's crucifixion in Jerusalem. He stated that he saw the Ark but was instructed by divine intervention not to photograph it, a claim that generated fervent belief among some, but was dismissed by experts due to a lack of any corroborating evidence or methodological rigor. Other modern seekers have pointed to ancient tunnels under the Temple Mount, or even suggested it was taken to Egypt, Babylon, or southern Africa. Each theory carries its own narrative, its own set of clues, and its own dedicated followers, creating a modern tapestry of quests that mirrors the ancient legends. Yet the most significant barrier to solving this mystery may not be a lack of clues, but an excess of profound sensitivity. The Temple Mount in Jerusalem, known to Muslims as the Haram al-Sharif, is one of the most contested religious sites on earth. Any archaeological excavation there is not merely a scientific endeavor, it is a geopolitical and theological lightning rod. The potential for sparking intense conflict makes systematic, large-scale exploration virtually impossible. This means the most likely location, according to one major theory, is permanently off-limits to the tools that could confirm or deny the Ark's presence. It is a perfect historical stalemate, so the Ark endures in a state of permanent potential, physically residing either in a guarded chapel in Ethiopia, a sealed tunnel in Jerusalem, or nowhere at all. Its power lies in its absolute absence from the verified record, a void that faith, legend, and human curiosity continually strive to fill. This ensures that as we move through the 21st century, the Ark of the Covenant remains not just a lost object, but a timeless question about where history ends and belief begins. From the sacred and ancient, we descend into the profane and modern, from a missing object to a missing man. The autumn of 1888 in London's Whitacapel district was a season of terror, cloaked in industrial fog and the sickly glow of gas lamps. In the span of just a few months, at least 5 women, all poor and living on the margins, were murdered with a shocking, surgical ferocity. The killer's methods were horrifically specific, indicating not just rage, but a gruesome knowledge of human anatomy. The press, now a mass media force, seized upon the crimes with sensational headlines, printing every grisly detail and coining the name that would echo through history, Jack the Ripper. The name itself came from a series of taunting letters, most famously the "Dear Boss" letter, sent to police and newspapers, boasting of the crimes and promising more. Whether these were genuine communications from the murderer or cruel hoaxes by journalists is still debated, but their effect was instantaneous. They transformed a local crime spree into a global media event, creating the world's first serial killer celebrity, a phantom whose legend grew with every newspaper sold. The list of suspects is a roster of Victorian unease. There was Montague John Drute, a barrister and teacher found drowned in the Thames shortly after the last murder, his own family reportedly suspecting him of being the Ripper. Aaron Kosminski, a Polish Jewish immigrant and hairdresser who was committed to an asylum, was named as the prime suspect by some senior police officials in later years. Francis Tumblety, an American quack doctor with a hatred of women, who was arrested in London for unrelated offenses and then fled the country. And then there are the conspiracy theories, the most famous suggesting the killer was a member of the British royal family or a doctor covering up an illegitimate royal birth, a narrative woven from threads of class resentment and mystery. Yet the case went permanently cold for reasons far more mundane than conspiracy. The investigation was doomed by the very time in which it occurred. Forensic science, as we understand it, simply did not exist. There was no fingerprint analysis, no blood typing, no way to link trace evidence. Police work relied heavily on eyewitness testimony, which in the foggy, crowded slums of White-Capelle was notoriously unreliable. The crime scenes were contaminated by crowds and bungled by constables untrained in evidence preservation. The victims, marginalized and impoverished, were not considered important enough to warrant a protective societal response until it was far too late. Jack the Ripper vanished into the same fog from which he emerged, not because he was a supernatural genius, but because he operated in a perfect storm of social neglect and scientific ignorance. His identity is not locked away in a sealed archive or a hidden tomb, but lost in the chaotic, unrecorded shadows of a city that did not yet know how to see. The very fog that hid Jack the Ripper is now being parted by the piercing light of 21st century science. In recent years, the most tantalizing promise of a solution has come not from dusty archives but from a laboratory. The focus of this modern hunt is a single artifact, a silk shawl allegedly found at the scene of Catherine Eddowes' murder. In a 2019 study published in the Journal of Forensic Sciences, a team led by scientist Jari Louhela made a stunning claim. They reported extracting mitochondrial DNA from what they believed were blood and seminal stains on the shawl. This genetic material, they stated, was a match to both a descendant of Eddowes and, more explosively, to a descendant of Aaron Kosminski's sister. The conclusion seemed to leap from the pages, pointing directly to the Polish immigrant barber as the infamous killer. For a moment, it appeared a century-old mystery had been cracked open by genetic code. Yet the scientific community responded not with celebration, but with a chorus of profound and detailed skepticism. The criticisms are fundamental, attacking the very foundation of the evidence. First and most damning is the shawl's provenance. There is no verifiable chain of custody linking this specific piece of fabric directly to the Eddowes crime seen in 1888. The story goes that a police officer took it from the scene and gave it to his wife, but this is an unverified family tale, not documented history. Without that ironclad provenance, the shawl could be a Victorian-era piece from anywhere, its stains from anything. Second is the immense risk of contamination. This shawl was not stored in a sterile evidence locker. It was handled, displayed, and passed down through families for over 130 years. Every person who touched it, every environment it was kept in, could have left traces of modern DNA, hopelessly muddying the genetic picture. Experts argue that isolating a pure sample from the 1880s from such an object is, with current technology, nearly impossible. The study's methodology and the interpretation of its genetic data have also been fiercely debated by other geneticists, leaving the Kosminski connection on very shaky ground. Alongside genetics, modern criminal profiling has been applied to the Ripper case, creating a psychological silhouette of the killer. Profilers suggest he likely lived or worked within walking distance of the crime scenes, blending into the impoverished neighborhood. He probably had a day job that required manual dexterity, given the nature of the wounds, pointing perhaps to a butcher, a surgeon, or even a leather worker. His attacks indicate a deep-seated rage toward women, possibly triggered by a specific rejection or stemming from a profound psychological disorder. This profile is compelling, but it is also generic, a sketch that could fit hundreds of men in Antikythera at the time. It provides context and motive, but not a name. The brutal truth is that Jack the Ripper may represent the absolute limit of historical detective work. We have moved from foggy streets to genome sequencing, yet the core problem remains. The physical evidence is either lost or irrevocably tainted. The witnesses are long dead. We are left applying the most advanced tools of our age to whispers and shadows. Unless a verifiable, pristine piece of evidence emerges with an impeccable historical pedigree, a discovery that seems increasingly unlikely, the Antikythera murderer's true identity is destined to remain a ghost in the machine, a permanent question mark in criminal history. The shadowy figure of Jack the Ripper represents a mystery of motive and identity, but what about a mystery of pure, brilliant intellect? In 1901, sponge divers exploring a Roman-era shipwreck off the coast of the Greek island of Antikythera brought up a lump of corroded bronze and wood encrusted with 2 millennia of sea life. To the archaeologists of the time, it was an unidentifiable curiosity, perhaps a piece of navigational equipment or a statue fragment, and it was catalogued and largely forgotten. Decades later, as the crust began to be carefully removed, researchers saw something that should not have been there. Gears, dozens of intricate, precisely cut bronze gears, arranged in a complex configuration and inscribed with tiny, faded Greek lettering. This was not a statue, it was a machine, a clockwork device of staggering complexity, and it had been resting on the seafloor since around 100 years before the Common Era. The Antikythera Mechanism, as it came to be known, was an analog computer crafted over 2,000 years ago. Its purpose, painstakingly reconstructed through advanced imaging techniques like three-dimensional X-ray scanning, was to model the cosmos. By turning a hand crank on its side, an operator could move dials and pointers across several faces, predicting the positions of the sun and moon, the phases of the lunar cycle, and even the dates of upcoming solar and lunar eclipses. It could track the irregular orbit of the moon and model the cycles of known planets. This was not just a calendar, it was a dynamic, mechanical representation of heavenly motion, a portable planetarium of breathtaking ambition. The implications of this single device are nothing short of revolutionary. For centuries, the narrative of ancient technology placed such sophisticated mechanical knowledge in the medieval or Renaissance eras, with complex geared devices like astronomical clocks emerging in Europe around the 14th century. The Antikythera Mechanism shatters that timeline. It proves that the ancient Greeks in the centuries before Christ possessed a profound understanding of gearing, astronomy, and precision engineering that history had completely forgotten. Thinkers like Archimedes were known from texts to have created ingenious devices, but here was the physical proof, a working model of abstract mathematical theories. Its very existence forces a profound and humbling question. If this level of technology existed, what else was lost? The mechanism was not a one-off experiment, but a refined instrument, suggesting a tradition of craftsmanship and scientific instrument making that vanished when the ship carrying it sank. That knowledge may have been preserved in the great library of Alexandria, only to be consumed by fire or scattered and forgotten in the collapse of the ancient world. The Antikythera Mechanism is a ghost of a golden age of science we can only glimpse, a single, surviving whisper from an era that understood the heavens well enough to build a machine to map their dance. The intricate gears of the Antikythera Mechanism turn silently in a museum case, but the questions they raise echo loudly. Who precisely was brilliant enough to conceive of such a device? While no maker's signature survives, scholars point to two likely origins steeped in the golden age of Greek science. The first suspect is the legendary school of Archimedes in Syracuse. We know from historical accounts that Archimedes himself built a sophisticated planetarium, a celestial sphere that demonstrated the motions of the sun, moon, and planets. The craftsmanship and theoretical knowledge required for such a device aligned perfectly with the mechanism's complexity. Could a disciple of his school, perhaps inspired by his work, have created this portable marvel? The other prime candidate is Posidonius of Rhodes, a famed philosopher, astronomer, and teacher whose workshop was located on that very island. Rhodes was a major center of astronomical study and mechanical engineering at the time, and the shipwreck that carried the mechanism was likely on a route from Rhodes to Rome. It is easy to picture a wealthy Roman, perhaps a senator or a general, commissioning such a masterpiece from Rhodes's greatest mind as a demonstration of both power and enlightenment. But why was it built? Its purpose is as layered as its gears. For a philosopher or a teacher, it was a dynamic demonstration of cosmic order, a way to make the abstract mathematics of the heavens physically tangible for students. For a wealthy patron, it was the ultimate conversation piece, a dazzling display of knowledge and status to impress guests. And for a practitioner of astrology, which was a serious scholarly pursuit in the ancient world, it was a powerful computational tool. By accurately predicting lunar phases and planetary positions, it could be used to cast more precise horoscopes, linking celestial events to human affairs. This single object, therefore, served science, vanity, and spirituality all at once. The most haunting thought, however, is that this was not unique. Classical texts make fleeting references to other devices. Cicero wrote of a similar sphere built by Archimedes, brought to Rome as war booty. Such descriptions suggest the Antikythera Mechanism might be the sole surviving example of a known, if rare, class of scientific instruments. How many others were lost in the fires of libraries, the decay of time, or the holds of other sunken ships? This forces a staggering what-if. Imagine a world where this lineage of precise mechanical engineering was not fractured by the fall of empires. If this knowledge had been preserved and built upon, the foundational ideas for mechanical clocks, navigational sextants, and even early computational devices might have emerged 1,000 years earlier. The course of science and exploration could have accelerated in ways we can scarcely picture. The Antikythera Mechanism is not merely an artifact, it is a ghost from a road not taken, a silent testament to a parallel path of human ingenuity that vanished into the deep, leaving us to wonder just how advanced the ancient world truly was. The sea holds its secrets in a vast and silent vault. In December 1872, the merchant brigantine Mary Celeste presented the world with a ghost story written not in words but in absence. Found adrift between the Azores and Portugal by the crew of the Dei Gratia, the ship was a perfect paradox. She was completely seaworthy, her sails partially set and her hull sound, yet not a single soul remained aboard. The captain's log was up to date, the last entry noting a position just days earlier. In the galley, a meal was prepared and left uneaten on the table. The crew's personal belongings, their pipes and clothing, were all in place. The ship's precious cargo of industrial alcohol was largely intact, but the lifeboat was gone. It was as if the 10 people on board had simply vanished into the Atlantic air, leaving behind a fully functional vessel and a mystery that has haunted the public imagination for a century and a half. The immediate assumption was foul play, a mutiny or a pirate attack, yet nothing was stolen and there was no sign of a struggle. The most persistent myth, popularized by a famous short story, suggested that fumes from the alcohol cargo caused a feared explosion, prompting the crew to abandon ship in a panic. But when the explosion never came, they were left to perish in the small lifeboat. Maritime historians and chemists have thoroughly debunked this. The cargo was not the volatile kind that produces explosive vapors, and no evidence of fire or blast damage was ever recorded. So what could have caused such a sudden, orderly, yet catastrophic evacuation? The most plausible theories point to a sudden and terrifying natural event that convinced an experienced captain, Benjamin Briggs, that his ship was in immediate mortal danger. One strong candidate is a seaquake, an underwater seismic event. This could have produced a loud, booming noise and a violent shudder through the ship's timbers, perhaps even causing a temporary geyser of water to shoot up through the bilge pumps. Captain Briggs, fearing his hull had been cracked open and the ship was about to sink, may have given the order to abandon ship with all haste. Another possibility is a waterspout, a tornado over the ocean. The sight of such a violent vortex bearing down on them could have prompted the same desperate decision. In either scenario, the crew and passengers would have bundled into the single lifeboat, tethered to the Mary Celeste by a strong line, expecting to watch her go down. But the ship did not sink. The feared damage never materialized. The line connecting them to their salvation may have snapped in rough seas, or perhaps they tried to row after the drifting brigantine but could not catch her. Adrift in the vast Atlantic in a small boat, they would have been at the mercy of the waves, their fate sealed by a precaution that became a death sentence. The enduring power of the Mary Celeste story lies in its chilling normality. It was not a dramatic wreck but a peaceful abandonment. Every detail on board speaks of interrupted routine, of a threat perceived but not physically present. It is a snapshot of a single, catastrophic decision made under duress, a decision that turned a sound ship into a ghost ship. The ocean offered no second chances and left no bodies to tell the tale. In the end, the only true answer is the one the sea itself refuses to give, making the Mary Celeste not just a maritime mystery, but a profound and unsettling lesson in how quickly the solid world can turn into a trap. The vast, silent Atlantic swallowed the crew of the Mary Celeste, but on the sun-baked sands of Egypt stands a mystery of creation, not disappearance. The Great Pyramid of Giza is the last surviving wonder of the ancient world, a monument so immense and precise that its construction has fueled speculation for millennia. Built for Pharaoh Khufu around 2,560 years before the Common Era, its scale is almost incomprehensible. It consists of over 2.3 million limestone and granite blocks, each one averaging 2.5 tons, the weight of a large SUV. Stacked with breathtaking accuracy, it originally rose to a height of 480 feet. For centuries, the sheer impossibility of the task led some to propose supernatural or extraterrestrial intervention. Yet, to credit aliens is to dismiss the profound ingenuity of the ancient Egyptians themselves. The real mystery is not who built it, but how human hands and minds, using technology from the Bronze Age, achieved such a feat. The central debate among archaeologists and engineers is not about the builder's identity, but about their methods. How did they move those colossal stones, and how did they lift them into place? The most long-standing theory involves ramps, simple, massive earthen ramps built straight against one face of the pyramid, growing longer and steeper as the structure rose. While logical, this idea has problems. A straight ramp tall enough to reach the pyramid's peak would have required more material than the pyramid itself, an undertaking almost as monumental as the building project. This led to variations like the zigzagging ramp, which would have run along one face and turned corners, or the spiral ramp, which would have wound around the exterior like a giant corkscrew. Each design presents its own engineering puzzles, from the stability of the structure to the ability to maneuver heavy blocks around tight corners. A more revolutionary idea emerged in the early 2000s, proposed by French architect Jean-Pierre Houdin. His internal ramp hypothesis suggests that the Egyptians used a large external ramp for the first third of the pyramid's height, then continued construction using a corkscrewing ramp built inside the pyramid's own body. This internal tunnel, he argues, would have been more efficient and left the exterior smooth for finishing. Supporting evidence came from microgravimetry surveys that hinted at less dense, spiral-shaped anomalies within the pyramid structure, though these findings remain controversial. But before any block could be lifted, it had to arrive. Another crucial piece of the puzzle lies in logistics. Recent archaeological discoveries have revealed an elaborate, man-made waterway system branching off the Nile River. During Khufu's reign, a seasonal flood channel reached right to the base of the Giza Plateau. Researchers have found evidence of a sophisticated harbor and a network of canals that may have allowed workers to float the giant limestone blocks on barges for most of their journey from the quarries, drastically reducing the effort needed to drag them overland. Imagine the scene, a fleet of boats laden with stone moving through desert canals engineered by human will, bringing the mountain to the building site. So the emerging picture is not of a single magical solution, but of a symphony of coordinated techniques. A workforce of thousands, not slaves but likely skilled laborers paid with bread and beer, using copper chisels, wooden sledges, and ropes. They likely combined water transport, ingenious ramp systems, and simple levers to achieve the impossible. The Great Pyramid stands not as a testament to alien visitors, but as the ultimate proof of human organizational genius, a mystery we are slowly solving by learning to think like the ancients. That symphony of coordinated techniques produced a structure of almost supernatural precision. Consider its alignment. The Great Pyramid's base is oriented to the cardinal points with an error of less than 1/15th of a single degree. To achieve this, the ancient builders likely used a method called the circumpolar star method, tracking the points where a particular star rose and set on the horizon over the course of a year. This is a feat of patient, meticulous astronomy, not brute force. Then there are the joints between the massive outer casing stones, originally a smooth, gleaming white limestone shell. The surviving stones at the base fit together with gaps of just 1/50th of an inch, thinner than a credit card. This precision, achieved with simple tools, rivals modern masonry. Inside, the engineering grows even more daring. The Grand Gallery is a colossal ascending corridor, over 150 feet long and 28 feet high, with a corbelled ceiling that locks the stones in place, distributing the immense weight of the pyramid above it. This was not just a passageway, it was a structural marvel, a testament to a deep understanding of load-bearing mechanics. So what tools created this? The Egyptians had no iron or steel. Their primary cutting tools were copper chisels, which are soft and dull quickly against hard stone. To cut granite for the king's chamber, they used something far harder, pounders made of dolerite, a dense volcanic rock. Workers would have hammered these pounders along a line, grinding a groove into the granite, then inserting wooden wedges and soaking them with water. As the wood expanded, it would split the stone with a clean fracture. It was a slow, thunderously loud process of incredible patience, but the greater mystery lies in the mind, not the hand. Managing a workforce of thousands, perhaps tens of thousands, for the 20-plus years of the pyramid's construction was a logistical miracle. This was a pre-currency, pre-wheel society in Egypt. They needed to house, feed, and organize this army of laborers, artisans, and overseers. Recent excavations of workers' villages at Giza reveal bakeries capable of producing thousands of loaves a day, fish processing facilities, and medical clinics setting broken bones. This was a state-run project of staggering administrative complexity, a pyramid of people building a pyramid of stone. The final layer of mystery is encoded in its very dimensions. The ratio of the pyramid's perimeter to its original height is remarkably close to 2 times pi. The placement of its internal shaft seems aligned with specific stars important to the pharaoh's soul in the afterlife. Whether these are intentional mathematical constants and astronomical alignments or incredible coincidences is hotly debated. What is undeniable is that the pyramid embodies a unified vision, blending religion, astronomy, mathematics, and political power into a single, perfect form. The mystery, then, is holistic. It asks not just how they moved the blocks, but how they conceived of such perfection, and then executed it across generations with unerring accuracy. It stands as a silent challenge from the past, a monument to a lost school of engineering and thought whose complete textbooks have turned to dust, leaving only the magnificent, unanswered question in stone. Stone endures, but paper whispers. While the Great Pyramid stands as a monument to public power, another mystery from the past is intensely private, locked within the pages of a book no one can read. The Voynich manuscript is arguably the world's most frustrating puzzle. Created in the early 15th century, this 240-page vellum codex is a parade of the utterly bizarre. Its pages are filled with illustrations of plants that do not exist, their roots and leaves twisting in impossible configurations. There are diagrams of naked women bathing in interconnected, green-tinted pools and tubes, arranged in what looks like a biological or astrological chart. And there are countless celestial maps featuring unfamiliar constellations. All of it is captioned in an elegant, flowing script of unknown characters, an alphabet that has never been seen anywhere else on Earth. The book surfaced into modern history in 1912 when a Polish book dealer named Wilfred Voynich discovered it in a Jesuit library in Italy. He was captivated, and the world has been trying to crack its code ever since. The best cryptanalysts of the 20th century took up the challenge, including teams from both World War I and World War II who had broken enemy ciphers. They failed. Modern computational linguists and artificial intelligence have thrown immense processing power at the problem, analyzing letter patterns and word frequencies. The text has structure. It follows statistical rules similar to a natural language, with recurring words and syntax, yet its meaning remains sealed. This combination of coherent nonsense is what makes the manuscript so maddening. If it were random gibberish, we could dismiss it, but it behaves like a language, which means it should be translatable. So what is it? One persistent theory is that it is an elaborate, centuries-old hoax crafted to fool a wealthy patron. A clever forger could have invented a plausible-looking script and filled pages with fantastical drawings to sell a book of secrets. The problem with this idea is the cost and effort. Vellum was expensive, and the manuscript shows signs of heavy use, with worn pages and additions made by different hands over time. Would a con artist invest so much in a prop that would not pay off for centuries? More compelling are the linguistic theories. Some scholars argue it is written in a constructed script, a cipher that encodes a known language like Latin or a rare dialect. Every letter you see might stand for another or for a syllable. Others propose it is a genuine but extinct natural language, one that was never written down elsewhere, its speakers and context lost to history. The most tantalizing theory connects the strange imagery to a practical purpose. The herbal and anatomical sections suggest it could be a pharmacopoeia, a medical text describing plants and treatments from a tradition outside mainstream European science. The bathing women could represent a form of balneotherapy or water cure, their green pools perhaps symbolizing mineral springs. In this reading, the book is not a work of fantasy, but a practical guide to a forgotten healing art, its knowledge encrypted to protect trade secrets or to avoid persecution. The Voynich manuscript sits at the crossroads of art, science, and secrecy. It is a locked door in the library of history, and every tool we have invented to pick its lock has, so far, only made the mechanism seem more complex. It reminds us that the past can hide its thoughts not only in tombs, but in plain sight, on pages we can see but cannot understand. A book no one can read is a locked box, but a city that never was is an entire lost world. The legend of Atlantis is perhaps history's most magnificent ghost story, a tale of a utopia that became a tomb. Its entire existence comes from just two brief dialogues by the ancient Greek philosopher Plato, written around 360 years before the Common Era. In his works Timaeus and Critias, Plato describes a conversation where an Athenian statesman recounts a story told to his ancestor by an Egyptian priest. This island nation, located beyond the Pillars of Hercules in the Atlantic Ocean, was said to be larger than Asia and Libya combined. Its people, the descendants of the sea god Poseidon, built a magnificent capital city of concentric rings of water and land, adorned with precious metals and advanced engineering. They were a noble, powerful race who eventually grew corrupt, their hearts filled with arrogant ambition. As punishment, the gods sent earthquakes and floods, and the entire island sank beneath the waves in a single day and night of misfortune. For most classical scholars, this is not a historical report but a profound philosophical fable. Plato was a master storyteller who used myths to illustrate complex ideas. Atlantis serves as the ultimate cautionary tale about the dangers of imperial hubris and moral decay, a fictional counterpoint to his ideal republic. He even gives it a specific date, claiming it vanished 9,000 years before his own time, a number that seems designed to place it in a mythical, unreachable past. Yet the human mind craves a map more than a moral. The sheer vividness of Plato's description has launched 1,000 quests to find a real Atlantis. If it was not a literal place, could it have been inspired by one? The most compelling candidate lies in the Aegean Sea. The Minoan civilization on the island of Crete was a sophisticated, maritime power with elaborate palace complexes and advanced art. Around the year 1600 BC, the volcanic island of Thera, now called Santorini, erupted in one of the largest cataclysms in human history. The explosion and subsequent tsunamis would have devastated Minoan coastal settlements, potentially wiping out their fleet and crippling their economy. To a Greek like Plato, hearing echoes of this disaster centuries later, the story of a great island culture swallowed by the sea could have taken root, morphing over time into the grander tale of Atlantis. Other seekers look to the Atlantic itself, as Plato specified. The unusual Richat structure in Mauritania, a giant circular formation visible from space, has sparked theories that it matches the description of Atlantis's concentric rings. However, geologists confirm it is a natural, eroded dome, not a sunken city. Some point to the Azores archipelago, suggesting a mid-Atlantic island could have subsided after an earthquake. The most fringe theories even place a pre-Ice Age Atlantis in Antarctica. The enduring power of Atlantis is not in its potential coordinates but in what it represents. It is the archetype of the lost golden age, a mirror we hold up to our own civilization. In every era, we see our own technological pride and fear of collapse reflected in its story. It is a blank canvas onto which we project our anxieties about environmental disaster, our nostalgia for a purer past, and our secret hope that evidence of a wiser, more advanced ancestor lies waiting to be discovered. Atlantis is less a place to be found and more a dream we cannot stop searching for, a testament to our longing for a history more magical than the one we have. Plato's sunken utopia is a story written on water, but in the deserts of southern Peru, a different civilization wrote its message directly onto the earth. The Nazca lines are an art gallery on a continental scale, a series of hundreds of giant geoglyphs etched across nearly 200 square miles of arid plains. From ground level, the landscape appears as a vast, stony canvas of reddish-brown pebbles. You see only shallow trenches and cleared pathways, but ascend to the sky and the earth transforms. Enormous, precise figures emerge, a menagerie of creatures both real and mythical. A spider over 150 feet long, its leg joints perfectly rendered. A hummingbird with wings outstretched, a monkey with a spiraling tail. Alongside these biomorphic designs are clean geometric shapes, miles-long straight lines, trapezoids, and spirals that march across the desert floor. They were created by the Nazca culture, which flourished in the region from around 500 years before the Common Era to 500 years after. Their technique was deceptively simple, yet required immense communal effort. They removed the dark, sun-baked surface layer of iron oxide-coated pebbles, scraping them aside to reveal the lighter, sandy-colored soil beneath. This contrast created the lines, and the natural stability of the dry, windless climate has preserved them for nearly 2,000 years. The true mystery is not how they were made, but why. For whom were these colossal images intended, if they could only be fully appreciated from an impossible vantage point? One leading theory sees the lines as a giant astronomical calendar, aligned with the rising and setting points of the sun, moon, and significant stars. Certain lines do point to celestial events, suggesting the Nazca used the desert as an observatory to mark solstices and predict seasonal changes crucial for agriculture in a brutally dry land. Another, more spiritually compelling idea frames them as ritual pathways. The Nazca were a people deeply concerned with water, a precious and scarce resource. The geoglyphs, according to this view, were ceremonial walkways used in processions to plead with or honor deities associated with mountains and rainfall. By walking the lines of a spider or a hummingbird, participants might have been symbolically connecting with the spirit of that creature, believed to have power over water and fertility. This leads to the most profound interpretation of all, the idea of offerings to the gods themselves. If the gods resided in the sky, then surely they could see these magnificent drawings from their celestial realm. The lines were not for human eyes, but for divine ones, a permanent prayer etched into the landscape, a plea for life-giving water visible only to the entities who could grant it. This cultural explanation is far more satisfying than the persistent fringe idea that the lines were landing strips or signals for ancient astronauts. Archaeologists dismiss this not out of closed-mindedness, but because it ignores the wealth of evidence found at Nazca sites. We have their pottery, their textiles, their burial mounds. We understand their technological capabilities and their spiritual worldview. The straight lines and trapezoids bear a striking resemblance to the ceremonial plazas and architecture found at Nazca ground-level sites, scaled up to a monumental level. Creating the lines required no alien technology, just sophisticated surveying techniques using simple stakes and cords, a profound understanding of geometry, and the coordinated labor of a people united by a common faith. To see them as alien runways is to steal an incredible human achievement and replace it with a science fiction cliché. The real wonder of the Nazca lines lies in their testament to human intention and communal purpose. They represent a dialogue between a culture and its environment, a desperate and beautiful attempt to impose order and meaning on a harsh, unpredictable world. They are a message in a bottle meant for the heavens, and the haunting silence of the desert is the only reply they ever received. The Nazca lines are a prayer etched in earth, but another ancient text offers a promise of unimaginable wealth buried beneath it. Among the greatest archaeological discoveries of the 20th century were the Dead Sea Scrolls, a collection of ancient Jewish religious texts found in caves near Qumran between 1947 and 1956. These fragile parchment and papyrus manuscripts revolutionized our understanding of biblical history. But in 1952, in the same complex of caves, archaeologists found something that did not fit. It was not made of perishable parchment, but of metal, 2 oxidized rolls of copper, and its contents were not psalms or prophecies, but an inventory. This is the copper scroll, and it stands utterly apart from its companions. While the other scrolls are written in Hebrew or Aramaic on organic materials, the copper scroll is inscribed in a late, colloquial form of Hebrew, pressed directly into the metal sheets. Its text is not a spiritual guide, but a detailed list, a catalogue of 64 locations where staggering quantities of treasure are supposedly concealed. We are talking about tons of precious metals listed with almost bureaucratic specificity. It mentions deposits of gold and silver, along with precious incense and ritual vessels. The quantities are not symbolic, they are precise, down to specific talents and minas, ancient units of weight. The grand total, if taken literally, would represent a fortune worth billions in today's value, an amount that would dwarf the treasuries of most ancient kingdoms. This immediately sparked a fierce and enduring debate. Is this a literal treasure map, a work of imaginative fiction, or a document with a hidden symbolic meaning? The most tantalizing theory connects it directly to the greatest loss in Jewish history, the destruction of the Second Temple in Jerusalem by the Romans in the year 70. Could the copper scroll be a record of the temple's sacred treasury, hidden in the Judean wilderness by priests desperate to save it from the Roman legions? The scroll's language and the locations it mentions, many around Jerusalem and the Dead Sea region, make this a compelling possibility. It would transform the scroll from a curiosity into a sacred relic of a national catastrophe. Others argue it is a piece of folklore or a work of creative fiction, perhaps a legend about the treasures of the First Temple written down centuries later. A third school of thought suggests it is symbolic, listing not physical gold but spiritual wealth or even the hiding places of other, more important scrolls. The sheer physical effort of engraving on copper, however, argues against a simple fiction or allegory. Copper was expensive and difficult to work. Why go to such lengths to preserve a fantasy? The directions themselves are what drive treasure hunters to distraction. They are cryptic, vague, and deeply frustrating. One typical entry reads, "In the ruin that is in the valley, pass under the entrance leading east, 40 cubits there is a chest of money." Another says, "In the cavity of the old house of tribute, in the platform of the chain." These descriptions rely on landmarks and place names that were common knowledge 2,000 years ago, but are utterly obscure today. What ruin, which valley, where was the old house of tribute? It is like being given a map where all the street signs have long since crumbled to dust. This has not stopped the quest. Since its discovery, the copper scroll has inspired numerous expeditions, from serious archaeologists to enthusiastic amateurs. Some have used advanced technology like ground-penetrating radar to scan areas around Qumran and the suggested valleys. Others have followed the directions on foot, digging where the clues seem to point. The results have been uniformly disappointing. Not a single talent of silver, not one piece of temple treasure from the list has ever been conclusively recovered. The failures lead to several haunting possibilities. Perhaps the treasure was found and looted long ago, in antiquity itself, leaving the scroll as a ghost of a prize already claimed. Maybe the directions were understood only by a small group of initiates, and their knowledge died with them. Or perhaps the most likely explanation, the landscape has changed so dramatically over 2 millennia through earthquakes, erosion, and human development that the landmarks are now irretrievably lost, rendering the map permanently unreadable. The copper scroll thus presents a unique agony for historians. It is a document that speaks with the cold, precise voice of an accountant, yet points to a reality that remains stubbornly out of reach. It promises a tangible conclusion to a historical tragedy, offering the chance to recover what was lost in the flames of the temple. Yet it delivers only riddles, ensuring that this inventory of absence remains one of archaeology's most tantalizing and unfulfilled promises. The copper scroll's cryptic inventory speaks of treasures hidden by human hands, but sometimes the most profound mysteries are those where the human body itself becomes an unwitting, uncontrollable instrument. In the sweltering summer of 1518, the city of Strasbourg was gripped by a spectacle of pure, terrifying delirium. It began not with a whisper, but with a single, frantic step. A woman named Frau Trophia stepped into the street and began to dance. There was no music, no celebration. Her movements were jerky, compulsive, and utterly relentless. She danced for hours, then days, unable to stop. Within a week, dozens had joined her. Within a month, the streets were filled with a writhing, exhausted mass of over 400 people, dancing as if possessed. They danced until their feet bled, until their bones ached, until they collapsed from heart failure, stroke, or sheer exhaustion. Authorities, desperate for a cure, did the worst thing imaginable. Believing the dancers needed to dance the fever out, they hired musicians and built a wooden stage, hoping to facilitate the madness to its conclusion. This only intensified the epidemic, creating a public, sanctioned theater of suffering that lasted for 2 full months before finally burning itself out. To understand this horror, you must feel the atmosphere of Strasbourg at that time. The city was a pressure cooker of despair. Several years of devastating harvest had led to severe famine. Disease was rampant. The religious landscape was fractured and terrifying, with fear of damnation and divine punishment preached from every pulpit. Society was steeped in a belief in saints and demons, where any misfortune could be seen as a supernatural affliction. In this context, the dancing plague did not seem like a medical condition, but a curse, a collective punishment from God or a demonic infestation. The psychological stress on the population was absolute, a perfect breeding ground for what modern medicine calls mass psychogenic illness, a form of mass hysteria. This is not a fake illness, but a very real physical manifestation of extreme psychological distress. When a community shares an overwhelming, inescapable trauma, the mind can sometimes translate that anxiety into physical symptoms that spread socially like a behavioral contagion. In Strasbourg, the sight of one person dancing uncontrollably became a template for the community's shared panic, a physical expression of their collective terror that spread from person to person, a desperate and deadly cry for help written in spasmodic movement. But the mind is not the only suspect. A compelling physical theory points to the bread itself. The staple grain for the poor was rye, which is vulnerable to a fungus called ergot. When rye gets damp and moldy, it can produce ergotamine, a powerful toxin that is a precursor to LSD. Ergot poisoning, known historically as St. Anthony's fire, causes a horrifying array of symptoms, including violent muscle spasms, convulsions, hallucinations, and a burning sensation in the limbs. Could a contaminated food supply have triggered the involuntary movements that were then interpreted and amplified by the community's hysterical fear? It is a plausible piece of the puzzle. The writhing, jerking motions of ergotism could easily have been seen as a macabre dance. Yet, most medical historians note that classic ergot poisoning usually leads to gangrene and severe pain that would immobilize a person, not compel them to dance for days. This has led many experts to favor a hybrid explanation. Perhaps a few initial cases were caused by a mild ergotism or another neurological condition. Their bizarre public suffering then acted as a psychological trigger, igniting a mass psychogenic event in a population already primed for collective breakdown by starvation, disease, and religious terror. The dancing plague of 1518 is a dark window into the profound and terrifying connection between society and the individual body. It shows us that when a community's stress reaches a breaking point, it can erupt in ways that defy simple biology. This was not a choice, but a physiological and psychological prison. Those dancers were not performers, they were prisoners of a perfect storm, their bodies becoming the canvas upon which the entire city's anguish was violently painted. It forces us to ask where the line truly lies between a sickness of the body and a sickness of the environment, a mystery that resonates uncomfortably in our own age of widespread anxiety and social contagion. The dancing plague was a collective cry of anguish written on the human body, but what happens when the source of suffering is a sound only you can hear? In the high desert of Taos, New Mexico, a persistent, low-frequency hum has tormented a small percentage of residents for decades. Described as a distant diesel engine idling just over the horizon, this sound is not a product of imagination for those who perceive it, known as hearers. It is a constant, invasive presence, a vibration felt in the bones as much as heard by the ears, often leading to chronic insomnia, anxiety, and a desperate search for quiet that never comes. The strangest aspect of the Tao's hum is its selectivity. While an estimated 2% of the local population reports hearing it, their neighbors in the same house may hear absolutely nothing. Even more baffling, standard audio recording equipment typically fails to capture it, leaving hearers with a deeply personal and isolating experience, unable to prove the phenomenon they live with every day. Scientific investigations have been thorough and frustrating. Teams have deployed sensitive seismographs and spectrum analyzers, searching for any man-made or geological source. They have ruled out obvious culprits like power lines, underground gas lines, military communications, or distant industrial machinery. The hum persists, seemingly immune to detection by the very instruments designed to listen. This has led researchers down a fascinating maze of theories that straddle the line between physiology and physics. One prominent explanation points inward to the human body itself. Could the hum be an extreme form of tinnitus, a perception of sound generated by the auditory system without an external source? While plausible, most hearers insist the Tao's hum has a distinct mechanical quality, unlike the ringing or hissing of typical tinnitus. Another biological theory involves spontaneous autocaustic emissions, faint sounds naturally produced by a healthy inner ear. In rare cases, these internal sounds might become audible to the person generating them, like hearing the quiet workings of your own body amplified. Yet this still does not explain why the phenomenon clusters in specific geographic locations. This leads to environmental possibilities, such as the presence of very low-frequency electromagnetic waves, perhaps generated by geological activity or even atmospheric pressure. These infrasound waves below the range of normal human hearing could potentially interact with the architecture of certain buildings or the unique physiology of some individuals, creating the perception of a hum. The Tao's hum is more than a quirky local legend. It is a profound mystery about the very nature of perception. It asks where the boundary lies between the external world and our internal processing of it. Is the source out there in the desert a subtle vibration from the earth itself, or is it a key that unlocks a hidden sensitivity within a fraction of human ears? This enigma repeats itself in similar hum locations worldwide, from Bristol in England to Windsor in Canada, creating a global community of hearers united by a sound that science can neither confirm nor silence. It is a reminder that some mysteries are not buried in the past but vibrate quietly in the present, waiting for the day when our understanding of perception finally catches up to what some people have known all along. A hum in the desert is a private torment, but a signal from the stars was a public shout aimed directly at Earth. On August 15, 1977, a radio telescope known as the Big Ear at Ohio State University was performing its routine, automated scan of the sky, listening for whispers in the cosmic static. The data printed out on long, perforated paper, a stream of letters and numbers representing signal strength. For 72 seconds, the telescope's fixed gaze passed over a patch of space in the constellation Sagittarius, and the printer recorded something extraordinary. The signal strength spiked, represented by the alphanumeric sequence 6EQUJ5. A few days later, astronomer Jerry Amon was reviewing the printout. His eyes locked onto that anomalous string. He circled it in red pen, and in the margin he wrote a single, emphatic word that would forever name the event: wow. That exclamation captured the sheer, electrifying surprise of the detection. This was not random noise. The signal appeared on only one of the telescope's two receivers, exactly as expected for a source from deep space, and it matched the predicted frequency band where scientists thought an intelligent civilization might broadcast, near the hydrogen line at 1420 MHz. It bore all the hallmarks of a transmission that was not from Earth, not from our solar system, but from somewhere out in the galactic void. The search for a repeat began immediately and has never stopped. Astronomers have pointed radio dishes toward that same coordinate hundreds of times over the decades, listening with ever more sensitive equipment. The the result has been a profound and echoing silence. The wow signal was a one-time event, a cosmic flashbulb that went off once and never again. This singular nature is what fuels the mystery and the debate. What could possibly produce such a powerful, focused, and fleeting radio burst? One camp argues for a natural, if poorly understood, astrophysical phenomenon. Perhaps it was an immense release of energy from a distant star or a cataclysmic event we have not yet catalogued. In 2017, a team proposed a more specific natural cause, suggesting the signal could have been emitted by hydrogen clouds surrounding a passing comet. This theory was quickly disputed as comets were not in the right part of the sky at that time, and their emissions do not match the signal's specific profile. The failure of the comet explanation only deepened the enigma. This leaves the most tantalizing and utterly unprovable possibility hovering in the air. Could it have been an artificial transmission from an extraterrestrial intelligence? The idea fits the signal's technical characteristics perfectly, a deliberate broadcast on a universal frequency. The 72-second duration matches exactly how long the Big Ear telescope would have observed a fixed point in the sky, as if the signal was a steady beacon and we simply passed through its beam. If so, what was its purpose? A deliberate hello, a navigational pulse for their own vessels, or perhaps a malfunctioning piece of alien technology, a cosmic burglar alarm we accidentally tripped? The heartbreaking truth is we will likely never know. The wow signal sits in a unique category of mystery, a data point of perfect ambiguity. It was too structured to easily dismiss as noise, yet too isolated to ever verify. It is a single, perfect sentence in a language we do not speak, heard once and never repeated. It represents the ultimate cosmic tease, a reminder that the universe might be shouting, but we have only just learned to cup our ear to the silence. The wow signal was a cosmic whisper, but the Dyatlov Pass incident was a human scream frozen in time. In the winter of 1959, a group of 9 experienced Soviet hikers, led by Igor Dyatlov, embarked on a trek through the northern Ural Mountains. They were university students, skilled and fit, preparing for a certification in mountain climbing. They were never seen alive again. Search parties found their camp weeks later on the slopes of Kholat-Syakh, a name meaning Mountain of the Dead. The scene was one of profound and chilling disorder. Their tent had been cut open from the inside, as if slashed by a frantic hand. The hikers had fled into the sub-zero darkness, some wearing only their underwear and socks, leaving behind warm clothing and boots. Their footprints in the snow told a story of a terrified, barefoot dash down the slope toward a nearby forest. Over the next few months, all 9 bodies were recovered, scattered in different locations. The causes of death were a horrifying puzzle. Some had died from hypothermia, simply freezing in the brutal cold, but others had sustained catastrophic internal injuries. 2 men had massive chest fractures with force comparable to a high-speed car crash, yet their skin showed no signs of external bruising or trauma. 1 young woman had a fractured skull. Another, Lyudmila Dubinina, was found missing her tongue along with severe damage to her eyes and facial tissue. The official Soviet investigation, conducted in a climate of secrecy, closed the case with a vague verdict of a compelling natural force and sealed the files. This vacuum of information gave birth to decades of speculation. The most persistent modern theory is an avalanche. Proponents argue a small, sudden slab of snow could have struck the tent at night, causing panic and the desperate escape. The chest injuries could have been caused by the heavy, dense snowpack itself. A major reinvestigation by Russian authorities in 2019 officially endorsed this explanation, stating a slab avalanche was the likely trigger. Yet, seasoned mountaineers and investigators point to glaring inconsistencies. The slope where the tent was pitched was not steep enough for a major avalanche. No avalanche debris was reported at the scene by the original search teams. The pattern of the injuries, especially the isolated, extreme force trauma without external marks, does not neatly fit a snow slide. This has opened the door to other possibilities. Could infrasound, those low-frequency waves produced by wind over the mountain ridge, have induced a state of irrational terror, driving the hikers mad with a need to flee? Was there a secret military test in the area, perhaps involving experimental weapons or sonic devices, that went horribly wrong? More fanciful theories, born of the remote wilderness, suggested an attack by a local Yeti or even extraterrestrial intervention. The truth is, no single theory perfectly explains every detail of that night. The missing tongue, for instance, is now widely considered a result of post-mortem scavenging by small animals in the weeks before discovery, a grim but natural process. The chest injuries remain the core mystery, with some scientists proposing a rare phenomenon called a katabatic wind, a sudden, powerful downslope gust that could have collapsed the tent with the force of a freight train and thrown bodies against rocks and trees. The Dyatlov Pass incident endures because it is a perfect storm of the knowable and the inexplicable. It presents a sequence of logical actions, like cutting a tent from the inside to escape, followed by a series of utterly illogical outcomes. It is a forensic riddle wrapped in a historical enigma, a reminder that even in our modern age, nature can produce forces we do not fully understand, and that in the deep silence of a mountain wilderness, the line between accident and mystery can vanish in an instant. Deep in the Ural Mountains, a tent was slashed open in panic, but in the sands of Iraq, a simple clay jar was sealed shut for centuries, guarding a secret of a different kind. Known as the Baghdad Battery, this unassuming artifact is a trio of ordinary objects that together suggest something extraordinary. It consists of a 5-inch tall clay jar, inside which sits a rolled copper cylinder, and within that, an iron rod. The rod is held in place by an asphalt plug at the top, which would have sealed the jar and kept the two metals from touching. Dating from either the Parthian or Sassanid period, somewhere between 250 years before the Common Era and 650 years after, its design is eerily familiar to any modern student of science. If this jar were filled with an acidic liquid, something as common as vinegar or grape juice, the iron and copper would act as electrodes and the acidic solution would act as an electrolyte. The result would be a small but measurable electric current, roughly 1 volt of electricity. This simple description has ignited a firestorm of debate. Did ancient Mesopotamian artisans truly stumble upon the principles of electrochemistry 2,000 years before Alessandro Volta invented the modern battery in 1800? The most tantalizing theory is electroplating. The process of using an electric current to bind a thin layer of one metal, like gold, onto the surface of another, like silver, is a common technique in jewelry making. Proponents of this idea point out that exquisite gilded objects from the same period and region do exist. Could the Baghdad Battery, or perhaps a series of them connected together, have provided the gentle current needed for such delicate work? In the 1930s, a German archaeologist named Wilhelm Koenig, who first studied the jar, proposed exactly this. Later experiments proved the concept was physically possible. Replicas filled with grape juice or vinegar have consistently generated a small voltage, enough to electroplate a silver object with gold if sustained over several hours. The evidence seems to point toward a remarkable ancient discovery. Yet, the case is far from closed. Skeptics offer a much more mundane explanation. They argue the jar is simply a storage vessel for sacred scrolls. The copper cylinder would have held a piece of parchment or papyrus, the iron rod might have been a decorative or structural element, and the asphalt plug was just a standard seal to protect the contents from moisture and insects. This was a common practice for storing important religious or administrative texts. If this is true, then the electrical properties are nothing more than a fascinating coincidence, a quirk of materials that meant nothing to its original owners. The archaeological record frustratingly supports both possibilities and neither. No wires have ever been found that could connect multiple jars into a useful battery bank. No electroplated objects from the era have been conclusively proven to have been gilded using an electrochemical method rather than a mechanical one like mercury gilding. The jar itself was an isolated find with no workshop context or instructions buried alongside it. It exists in a vacuum, a single data point of potential. This is what makes it a perfect historical anomaly. It is a piece of technology that seems to be centuries ahead of its time, yet it left no visible footprint on the civilization that created it. It forces us to ask a difficult question. Does the absence of corroborating evidence mean the battery was never used as one, or does it mean we have simply not found that evidence yet? Perhaps the knowledge was a closely guarded secret of a specific guild of artisans, lost when their workshop was destroyed. Or perhaps the effect was noticed but not understood, a curious trick relegated to temple rituals. The Baghdad battery sits on a razor's edge between genius and happenstance. It is a whisper of voltage from the ancient world, a spark of possibility that challenges our linear view of scientific progress, leaving us to wonder how many other simple jars, long since broken, once held the quiet hum of forgotten power. That whisper of voltage from an ancient jar reminds us that some mysteries are born from misinterpretation, while others are amplified by the very human need for a supernatural story. The Bermuda Triangle is a perfect storm of both. This expanse of ocean between Miami, Bermuda, and Puerto Rico is less a geographic location and more a modern myth, a pop culture vortex where facts vanish almost as quickly as the ships and planes it supposedly consumes. Its legend was cemented in the public imagination by a series of high-profile, genuinely baffling disappearances that seem to defy all logic. The most famous of these is the loss of Flight 19 in December 1945. 5 United States Navy Avenger torpedo bombers on a routine training mission vanished after their leader reported his compasses spinning uselessly. "We are not sure where we are," the pilot radioed. "Everything looks strange." A massive sea and air search found no trace of the 14 crewmen, and a rescue plane sent after them, a Martin Mariner flying boat, also disappeared without a distress call, adding another 13 souls to the toll. Then there was the SS Marine Sulphur Queen, a 523-foot tanker carrying molten sulfur, which vanished with 39 crew in February 1963. Only a few life preservers and a solitary life jacket were ever recovered. These cases are the compelling, tragic core of the Triangle's legend, stories of experienced crews and sturdy vessels seemingly swallowed whole by a calm sea under a clear sky. The mystery, however, begins to unravel when you examine the environment itself. The Bermuda Triangle is not a placid lagoon. It is one of the most heavily trafficked and meteorologically volatile stretches of ocean on Earth. It sits squarely in Hurricane Alley, where sudden, violent tropical storms can erupt with little warning, generating waves powerful enough to break a ship in two. The area is also known for unique magnetic anomalies that can cause compasses to deviate from true north, a disorienting problem for navigators relying on older instruments, especially before the advent of global positioning systems. Furthermore, the triangle is carved through by the mighty Gulf Stream, a river within the sea moving at several knots. This current can swiftly disperse debris from a sinking vessel across thousands of square miles, making it nearly impossible to find, and can also create dangerous, steep waves that appear out of sequence with the prevailing swell. When you combine these natural hazards with the sheer volume of maritime and air traffic passing through the region, statistically, some losses are inevitable. Rigorous analyses by insurers and agencies like the United States Coast Guard have repeatedly shown that the rate of disappearances in the Bermuda Triangle is no higher, percentage-wise, than in any other similarly busy oceanic region. The legend persists not because of the data, but in spite of it. Our minds are wired to find patterns and meaning, especially in tragedy. The unexplained core of cases like Flight 19 provides a narrative vacuum, and nature abhors that vacuum. We fill it with tales of alien abductions, underwater pyramids, or rips in the fabric of space-time, because a fantastical cause can sometimes feel more satisfying than a mundane confluence of bad weather, human error, and the immense indifferent power of the sea. The Bermuda Triangle, therefore, endures as a mystery not of the ocean but of storytelling itself, a reminder that the most enduring enigmas are often those we build around the things we fear but cannot fully control. The sea can swallow ships without a trace, but on dry land, a different kind of predator used ink and paper to create a terror all his own. In the late 1960s and early 70s, Northern California was held hostage not just by a serial killer, but by his voice. The Zodiac Killer murdered at least 5 people, though he claimed many more, but his true weapon was communication. He sent a series of taunting letters to Bay Area newspapers, filled with bragging details, threats, and most infuriating of all, cryptograms. These ciphers were his signature, a direct challenge to the public and the police, a game where he held all the rules. The first, known as the 408 cipher, was cracked relatively quickly by a schoolteacher and his wife. It revealed a narcissistic, hate-filled rant but no name. The second, a 340-character cipher, proved far more stubborn. For 51 years, it defied every expert, every government codebreaker, every amateur sleuth who stared at its grid of symbols. It became a monument to the killer's ego, an uncrackable puzzle that seemed to guarantee his anonymity forever. Then, in December 2020, a breakthrough arrived from an unexpected quarter. A team of 3 amateur cryptographers, using modern computing power and clever statistical analysis, finally shattered the code. The world held its breath, expecting a confession, a clue, a triumphant reveal. What they got was a crushing anticlimax. The deciphered text was a rambling, nihilistic, and grammatically chaotic message about not wanting to go to the gas chamber and collecting slaves for the afterlife. It offered no hints about his identity, no location, no concrete details. It was pure, performative ego, a testament to the emptiness at the core of his crimes. The solution, while a monumental technical achievement, only deepened the mystery. It proved the Zodiac was not a mastermind leaving an elegant trail, but a chaotic individual screaming into the void, his ciphers perhaps more about inflating his own legend than any real desire to be understood. Yet the hunt is not over. 2 short ciphers remain, their brevity making them perhaps even more difficult than the long ones. The Z13 and Z32, as they are known, are believed by many investigators to contain the killer's name. With only 13 and 32 characters respectively, they offer no room for error or linguistic patterns. A single symbol out of place renders the entire message gibberish. This is where the mystery evolves from a cold case into a live, global puzzle. Today, the quest has moved from police file rooms to online forums and distributed computing projects. Enthusiasts from around the world apply new cryptographic techniques, from brute force computing attacks to sophisticated linguistic modeling, trying every possible key. They crowdsource ideas, debate theories, and slowly chip away at the granite face of these final codes. Modern technology provides a faint but persistent hope that the combination of human ingenuity and machine processing power might one day force those last ciphers to give up their secret. The Zodiac's identity is no longer just a question for detectives. It is a challenge to the collective mind of the internet, a digital ghost waiting to be named by the very connected world he never lived to see. The ciphers of the Zodiac are a modern puzzle of human malice, but the stones of Karnak are an ancient puzzle of human devotion. In the windswept landscape of Brittany, France, a silent army stands guard. Row upon row, line upon line, over 3,000 granite megaliths stretch across the fields and heath for nearly 3 miles. This is the Karnak alignments, the largest collection of standing stones on the planet. Unlike the singular monument of Stonehenge, Karnak is a vast, ordered landscape, with stones arranged in long, parallel lines that seem to march toward the horizon. Some are barely knee-high, others loom over 10 feet tall, their surfaces smoothed by 6,500 years of Atlantic weather. They were erected by a Neolithic people around 4,500 years before the Common Era, a society without metal tools, without the wheel, yet driven by a purpose so compelling it mobilized generations. The sheer scale of the labor is almost incomprehensible. Each stone, some weighing tens of tons, was quarried, transported, and then planted upright into the earth. This was not the work of a season, but of centuries, a project that would have defined the cultural and spiritual life of countless communities. So what vision was grand enough to justify such an epic undertaking? One leading theory looks to the sky. Archaeoastronomers have noted that the main alignments are oriented precisely to the rising and setting points of the sun at the solstices. The stones could have functioned as a colossal calendar and observatory, their long rows acting as sightlines for priests or elders to track the passage of the seasons, to predict lunar cycles, and to mark the solar events that dictated planting and harvest times. In this reading, Karnak was a Neolithic cathedral of science, a permanent, stone-built interface between a farming people and the cosmos they depended upon. Another interpretation points inward to the realm of ritual. The site is not just alignments, it is a complex that includes dolmens, which are stone table tombs, and large burial mounds called tumuli. This suggests Karnak was primarily a domain of the dead, a sacred precinct where the living performed ceremonies to honor ancestors and commune with spiritual forces. The process of walking between the towering stones, following the ceremonial avenues, could have been a form of pilgrimage, a physical journey meant to mirror a spiritual transition. A simpler but no less profound idea is that the alignments were territorial markers, a colossal statement of identity and control carved into the land itself. Erecting these stones declared, "This land is ours, shaped by our gods and our ancestors." It was a permanent contract with the earth, written in a language of granite. Local folklore offers a more whimsical explanation, a story that has persisted since the Middle Ages. It tells of a Roman legion marching across Brittany, only to be confronted by the wizard Merlin. With a wave of his hand, the sorcerer turned every soldier to stone, freezing them in their tracks for all eternity. While a charming tale, it speaks to the same awe that grips modern visitors, the need to explain the inexplicable with a story of magic. The true power of Karnak lies in its silent insistence. These stones refuse to give up their secret. They offer no carvings, no burial goods rich enough to explain their meaning, no written records from their builders. They are a question posed in mineral form. Walking among them, you feel the weight of communal intention, the echo of a shared belief so powerful it could move mountains, one stone at a time. They remind us that some mysteries are not meant to be solved, only witnessed, a testament to the human urge to build meaning that will outlast the flesh. Granite stones stand as silent questions, but a single piece of linen has sparked centuries of shouting debate. The Shroud of Turin is perhaps the most intensely studied artifact in human history, a 14-foot-long herringbone weave cloth that holds the ghostly, full-length image of a man bearing the wounds of crucifixion. For millions of the faithful, this is not merely an archaeological curiosity. It is the sacred Sinden, the actual burial shroud of Jesus Christ, its image a divine imprint from the moment of resurrection. To others, it is an elaborate and brilliant medieval forgery. The cloth itself is a battlefield where faith, science, and history have clashed for generations. The image is hauntingly specific, a sepia-toned front and back impression of a bearded man with puncture wounds at the wrists and feet, a lance wound in the side, and what appears to be a pattern of scourge marks across the back. Most astonishingly, the image itself is a perfect photographic negative. When a photographer first took a picture of the shroud in 1898, the negative plate revealed a startlingly clear, positive image, a three-dimensional portrait with depth and detail invisible to the naked eye. This was decades before the invention of photography, a fact that has fueled endless speculation about how such an effect could have been achieved by a medieval artisan. For much of the 20th century, scientific investigation seemed to cautiously support the possibility of authenticity. Researchers identified what appeared to be traces of human blood, type AB, and microscopic pollen grains embedded in the fibers that were said to be from plants native to the Jerusalem area. The anatomical precision of the wounds, consistent with Roman crucifixion practices known to historians but not widely understood in the Middle Ages, added another layer of intrigue. The shroud seemed to be an unsolvable puzzle, a relic that defied easy explanation. Then, in 1988, science delivered what many believed would be the final, definitive verdict. With permission from the Vatican, a small sample from a corner of the shroud was divided and sent to 3 independent laboratories at the University of Oxford, the University of Arizona, and the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology. Using accelerator mass spectrometry, a state-of-the-art radiocarbon dating technique, all 3 labs arrived at the same conclusion. The flax plants used to make the linen had grown sometime between 1260 and 1390. The results were published in the prestigious journal Nature, and headlines around the world declared the shroud a medieval fake, a creation of the very era that saw a booming trade in religious relics. For many, the case was closed, but for the shroud's devotees and a number of scientists, the story was far from over. They launched a fierce counter-argument, challenging the methodology of the 1988 tests. Their central claim is contamination. The shroud has been handled for centuries. It survived a fire in 1532 that melted silver onto its edges and doused it with water. They argue that the sample taken from the corner, a heavily handled edge, was riddled with newer carbon from fungi, bacteria, and human touch, skewing the date dramatically toward a younger age. Some researchers point to chemical studies of the cloth's vanillin content, suggesting the linen is much older, perhaps 2,000 years old. Furthermore, they return to the enigma of the image itself. No one has been able to satisfactorily replicate it. It is not a painting, there is no pigment, the color resides only on the very topmost fibers of the threads. The image has a 3-dimensional quality, as if the intensity of the coloration corresponds to the distance between the cloth and a body, information that would be impossible for a medieval forger to encode. How could a hoaxer in the 1300s create a perfect photographic negative with anatomical and forensic precision, using a technology that remains a mystery to modern science? This is the heart of the enduring stalemate. The debate is no longer just about carbon dates or pollen grains, it is about paradigms. One side sees a medieval context and a carbon date as overwhelming proof of a forgery, believing any unexplained anomaly is a puzzle we have yet to solve. The other side sees the inexplicable image as the primary data, believing the carbon date must be an error because the object itself seems to transcend the technology of its alleged time. The Shroud of Turin, therefore, exists in a permanent state of tension. It is an object that invites absolute conclusions but permits none. It is a mirror reflecting what we choose to see, a testament to the human need for tangible connection to the divine, and a sobering reminder that even our most advanced tools can sometimes deepen a mystery rather than resolve it. A burial shroud holds the ghost of a single man, but a lost room holds the ghost of an entire era's opulence. Our final journey takes us to a treasure not merely stolen but erased, a chamber of golden sunlight turned to wartime dust. The Amber Room was a Baroque masterpiece, a symphony in solidified resin. Commissioned in Prussia in the early 1700s, it consisted of over 6 tons of meticulously carved amber panels, backed with gold leaf and silver foil, framed in gilded wood and adorned with countless mirrors and Florentine mosaics. It glowed with a warm, honeyed light, a literal room of gold. In 1716, it was gifted to Tsar Peter the Great of Russia, cementing a political alliance, and was later installed in the Catherine Palace near St. Petersburg, where it was expanded and perfected for over 2 centuries, becoming known as the 8th wonder of the world. Its fate, however, was tied to the darkest chapter of the 20th century. When Nazi Germany invaded the Soviet Union in 1941, soldiers of Army Group North reached the palace. Recognizing its immense value, they dismantled the entire room in a mere 36 hours, packed the panels into crates, and shipped them to Königsberg Castle in East Prussia, present-day Kaliningrad, for display as a trophy of Aryan conquest. This is where the trail goes cold. As the Red Army closed in on Königsberg in 1945, the city was subjected to relentless Allied bombing and ferocious ground combat. The castle was heavily damaged by fire. The Amber Room was never seen again. The most straightforward explanation is also the most tragic, that those priceless, flammable panels were consumed in the inferno at Königsberg Castle, reduced to smoke and ash amidst the bombardment. Soviet investigators initially favored this theory, though they found no definitive physical evidence of the amber in the castle's ruins. This vacuum of proof gave rise to a more tantalizing possibility that the crates were moved in the war's final chaotic days. Could Nazi officials, foreseeing the fall of Königsberg, have ordered the treasure hidden? Stories persist of a secret convoy loading the crates onto a ship, the Wilhelm Gustloff, which was later torpedoed and sank in the Baltic Sea with thousands of refugees aboard. Others suggest the panels were buried in a forgotten bunker, a salt mine, or even a lagoon in what is now Poland or Germany. For decades, treasure hunters have followed maps, diaries, and ground-penetrating radar hints, excavating sites across Eastern Europe. They have found underground chambers, but only empty spaces. They have drained lakes, finding only wartime debris. Not a single verified fragment of the original room has ever surfaced. A third, more cynical theory suggests a few key panels may have been secretly smuggled out by individuals and sold on a clandestine post-war art market, their provenance forever laundered by chaos. In 2003, a painstaking $24 million reconstruction of the Amber Room was completed and unveiled at the Catherine Palace, a stunning replica based on old photographs and descriptions. It is a beautiful ghost, a recreation that only deepens the mystery of the original. The true Amber Room remains the ultimate unclaimed prize, a billion-dollar treasure of staggering beauty that vanished into the fog of war. Its story is a Russian nesting doll of mysteries, a theft within a battle within a disappearance. It represents the countless fragments of history and culture that were shattered, looted, or simply lost in the 20th century's cataclysm. A radiant void that asks, what else of breathtaking beauty did we erase forever in the darkness? From the sunken dream of Atlantis to the frozen terror of Dyatlov Pass, these mysteries span continents and centuries, yet they share a common, haunting thread. Each one represents a crack in the foundation of our understanding, a question that refuses to be silenced by time or technology. We have confronted ancient builders who moved mountains of stone with tools we can barely comprehend, and modern code makers whose final messages still taunt us from the past. We have listened for a hum that science cannot record and a signal from the stars that never repeated. This incredible range, from the Voynich manuscript's unreadable pages to the Amber Room's vanished glow, proves that history is not a sealed book, but a living conversation filled with ellipses and blank spaces. These puzzles endure precisely because they challenge more than just facts. They challenge our perception of human capability, the limits of science, and the very nature of reality itself. Our relentless draw to these enigmas is not a weakness but a fundamental strength. They mark the thrilling frontier of the known, the shadowy edges where curiosity takes over from certainty. They remind us that wonder is a powerful engine for discovery, pushing archaeologists to dig deeper, linguists to decode harder, and all of us to look at the world with a more questioning eye. Every unsolved mystery is an invitation to participate, to wonder, and to keep searching. Now we turn that invitation over to you. In the comments below, tell us which of these mysteries captivates you the most. Do you have a personal theory about the Roanoke colony or a compelling idea about the wow signal? The conversation continues with you. If you want to join more deep dives into history's greatest enigmas, be sure to subscribe. Thank you for watching and keep